Tonight on Primetime, tensions continue to escalate in the Gulf. Tehran accuses the US of maintaining a naval blockade while seizing vessels, further disrupting global shipping. So where does this crisis go next? Good evening. Tensions are escalating in the Gulf as Iran hardens its stance on the Strait of Hormuz. Well, Tehran has accused the United States of maintaining a naval blockade on its ports and confirmed the seizure of 2 vessels in the key shipping route over alleged violations. Washington says its pressure measures and maritime restrictions remain in place despite Iran's claims.
Iran says it is impossible to reopen the Strait of Hormuz while alleged ceasefire violations by the United States and Israel continue, escalating tensions and disrupting global shipping. In a post on X, Iran's parliament speaker and chief negotiator Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf accused Washington of maintaining a naval blockade on Iranian ports, describing it as hostage-taking of the global economy. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said Tehran remains open to negotiations but warned that breach of commitments, blockade and threats are blocking meaningful progress with the US. The comments come as clashes intensify in and around the Strait of Hormuz, a strategic waterway and key artery for global oil and gas supplies. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said it had seized 2 vessels, accusing them of operating without authorization and attempting to leave the strait covertly, while allegedly tampering with navigation systems. Maritime security monitors also reported multiple incidents in the area. One vessel was fired upon by an Iranian-linked gunboat, sustaining heavy damage to its bridge. The escalation continues amid stalled diplomatic efforts, with planned talks in Pakistan between US and Iranian officials yet to begin. US President Donald Trump has indicated a second round of negotiations could take place within the next 36 to 72 hours as Pakistan continues mediation efforts. Trump extended the ceasefire on Tuesday and said the naval blockade would remain in place. The White House added there is no fixed deadline, with the timeline tied to Iran submitting a unified proposal. With both sides maintaining opposing blockades and negotiations uncertain, the future of shipping through the Strait of Hormuz remains in doubt.
OK, for more on this, we're joined in the studio by our very own Anastasia Lavrina, who's closely following developments. Anastasia, always good to have you with us. I mean, this seems like we're just stuck in an endless standoff, doesn't it? What's the latest?
Well, absolutely, Guy. We can see that the second round of talks is now on hold. Last time we spoke, we expected the next round of talks, the second round of talks, to take place in Islamabad, Pakistan, but in the last minute everything was cancelled because Iran said that it's not willing to participate in any kind of talk before United States unblocks the Strait of Hormuz, and there are a number of, let's say, conditions Iran put in front of the United States, and in the last minute also the American delegation didn't fly to Pakistan to participate. Therefore, now the next round of talk is on hold. That's why the situation seems controlled, but indeed volatile and very fragile, because there is no peace, and 2 sides taking their time, waiting until another part is ready to step back and propose any type of negotiations, agreeing with the conditions proposed by another side. But neither Iran nor United States is willing to show that it's their side who wish to step back. Therefore, now we see indeed controlled but still very fragile situation. And from the news we can read that 2 cargo ships were seized by Iran this time. Before the planned meeting in Pakistan, it was United States who seized the Iranian cargo ship. And 2 sides are trying to have more, let's say, on their side to, during the negotiation time, willing to see that their position prevails. What we also observed the world is watching very closely what's happening there. The price of oil, the crude oil is racing again. It's over $100, and just before it was $19.95. And if there is no any solution, it will be escalated, and of course it will negatively affect the global energy market and the global trade routes at the same time as it's happened before. So the confrontation continues. The peace is fragile, and it affects also domestic situation in both countries. Both of them, it's my understanding, I believe that both Tehran and Washington are willing to stop this war, and I can predict that the idea why Donald Trump decided to extend this ceasefire is just because he is also willing to stop this war, as it has its own negative implications for the American economy as well, and for the image, for the domestic image of Donald Trump before the intermediate elections, which is planned for November this year. So he's willing to be a winner and stop this war, but in his own conditions. But how the situation will be changed, only time can show us.
Yeah, it's very interesting that your sense is that both sides in a way want to find a way to end this war. What about the latest ship seizures by Iran? What should we read into that? Is that just a kind of reactionary move, or is there something more at play behind the scenes?
It's a part of the situation we observe in the Strait of Hormuz. Both United States and Iran wants to show that they are keeping the situation under their own control. Iran was the first who blocked the Strait of Hormuz, and now with the United States, meaning that while there is no any peace deal signed by two sides, these cases may be repeated many times. In this particular case, Iran wants to show that he still keeps control over the Strait of Hormuz, and in case United States willing to use it in its own, let's say, aims, goals, and with its own control, then Iran immediately can involve and affect the plans of the United States. It's the same happening with Washington. If any ship which is belonging to Iran or any country who have more or less stable relations with Iran also willing to pass the Strait of Hormuz, and United States may also intervene and showing that no, until any final agreement we have, no any ship may pass the Strait of Hormuz. So this is a game, but with very negative consequences for two sides and for the global energy market as well, as we already discussed it many times, meaning that before the next round of talk to take place, Iran and United States willing to have more, let's say, more positiveness on their own sides, more conditions, more rights to appeal to achieve the desired result. For Iran, it's very important. Number one, it's not only Strait of Hormuz, but also to achieve the removal of the sanctions. But what we can see, European Union is now also impose additional sanctions against Iran just because of its blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. So the situation is not changing, and we can see that in comparison, if we compare the position of two countries in the region, on the side of the United States, we still have a coalition who is not willing to participate, but from the global perspectives, it more or less support the position of Washington it has, and still criticizing Iran for the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, for the domestic human rights violations, and the, let's say, enlargement, the scope of the confrontation in the region when Iran attacked so many countries in the region in the first days of the escalation. But if we see what's happening in the region, it's Iran who still has its own geographical locations, which allows it to have a full control over the Strait of Hormuz, and not allowing the countries in the region, from the Gulf region specifically, to deal with the partners like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. They're also suffering, their economy is suffering because their cargo ships, the ships with fuels are not able to pass the Strait of Hormuz until the time the conflict between two countries, United States and Iran, are fully resolved.
It's very interesting. You mentioned there, Anastasia, that this is a game, but it's a game with quite strange rules, isn't it? And we were talking last night with Orkan about these contradictions, that there's a ceasefire on paper, but pressure on the ground. Is that a contradiction, or is it just the only way that both sides can proceed at all?
In my understanding of the situation, I think that both United States and Iran now waiting for the third country, like Pakistan, for example, to come up with any condition which will be acceptable by two sides. Neither US, nor Iran is willing to step back. They're not willing to show their weaknesses or, let's say, acceptance that the war was won by one side. So if there is any specific condition can be proposed by the third country, and I guess it's not a surprise that Donald Trump mentioned Pakistan and Prime Minister of this country, Shahbaz Sharif, in his latest post in social media when he said that we agreed to extend the ceasefire with the support of Pakistan. We followed the proposal which Pakistani Prime Minister also come up with. For my understanding, United States also willing to see the ceasefire not only to be extended, but to bring us to the final step, as the situation affects the American economy indeed too much. Probably, yes, United States, its energy policy doesn't depend too much on the Strait of Hormuz, but the oil prices, the fuel prices, and the prices on the basic products in the United States are also rising, also increased, and we can see dissatisfaction. But there is another big problem which is being highlighted by many experts, with whom United States have to sit at the table. Whether there is any one specific institution in Iran who can have these type of talks with the United States, whether it's corp guards or there is a president or someone else. Remember even in relations between Iran and Azerbaijan, when there was a drone attack against Azerbaijan, and of course Azerbaijani side, the President Ilham Aliyev expresses dissatisfaction by the position of Iranian government, and there were some statements meaning that we are not responsible for what's happened because there fragmentation within the Iranian political system. Yes, probably time passed and now they have more or less united political system, but still we can see that there is a division on the approach. There are some people, some policymakers who are willing to have this war, and they are blaming United States for all of this escalation and willing to see any kind of further military steps to be done by the government. But there is still some other policymakers who are willing to have more stable relations, stabilization of the situation. And the problem that I can watch it from different media sources, when the ordinary Iranians are being asked how do they see the situation, they are saying that unfortunately we don't know the details on how these negotiations, how these talks are being held at the moment. So their own government are not informing the population on what to expect. And people are living with an idea like what will happen tomorrow, whether a new type of escalation, whether we should expect more bombs to be thrown on Iran, or we will have the final peace deal to be signed between two countries. This unstable situation and this fragmentation within the political system of Iran also have its negative implications for the peace talks.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because on both sides, they could sort of foist the same criticism on the other. You know, you could say, well, Mr. Trump is famous for changing his mind. You could equally say, as you put it, well, we're not sure who we're negotiating with. Is it the IRGC or is it the government? So yeah, very interesting. We seem stuck in this stalemate, whichever way around we look at it. In terms of what's happening right now, do you think that some of this, Anastasia, is really about creating leverage for when those final stage talks do eventually resume?
I think that we cannot read all the details on how it's going, only the publicly available information and the information which is being spread in social media, but we do not know what is happening behind the closed doors. I do not believe that both Iran and Washington, United States, just willing to see what will happen after the ceasefire is ended within a week or 2 weeks. As I mentioned before, indeed, the situation, the peace is very fragile, but the talks continues. Much will depend on the, let's say, contribution other countries may also do. We cannot ignore the fact that the situation affects many countries in the region and far beyond. Therefore, how the European Union reacts on that, how the global superpowers, Russia and China, react and behave in this particular situation also matter. Unfortunately, in many of the cases, the position of China is also being ignored or neglected. Chinese economy is much dependable on the imported fossil fuels. So the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz and the inability to involve and participate in any kind of discussion also affect the position Chinese government may have in the upcoming future. Pakistan, as I already said, is indeed willing to keep very strong mediation support and position within these negotiations. And United States and Iran both trust Pakistan in this particular case. Pakistani position is very, very important, as this government has good relations with both Iran and the United States. So probably there is indeed a moment when the third government, when the third country has to come up with some specific ideas on how to reduce the level of escalation. If not a peace deal, but it has to be very prompt and very strong ceasefire agreement achieved, and there should be some guarantees done by both sides. Iran is willing to, let's say, have any guarantees on behalf of United States that there will not be any further attack against Iranian government. When Iran is speaking about any kind of compensation other countries in the region may provide, I don't think it will be acceptable. But when it comes to some, let's say, guarantees and some agreements, I guess there is indeed very good background which two countries may use to come up with some solutions, at least to make sure that the global economy is benefiting from the unblockade of the Strait of Hormuz.
Anastasia, it seems so finely balanced at this point. Is there any sense at all as to which side may slightly have the upper hand?
At the moment, I don't believe that there can be any such decision made by any side. Upcoming midterm elections in the United States, meaning that how exactly this conflict will be resolved will affect the position of Donald Trump within the American political and economic system. So he has to show its own population that the decision made to start this war has its own positive consequences for the image of the United States and its global stance, its let's say position within the NATO and within the global international system. And the same is coming with Iran, as we already can see how much this conflict is lasting. It's more than a month. And if Iran was willing to bypass with some conditions or have a step back policy, then Iran already could propose any kind of, let's say, proposals or conditions which will be acceptable by the United States and which will affect the negotiation process itself. On the other hand, we see that Iran is saying that if you are willing to continue this war, we are ready for that. So there is no any statement from either side that can show that whether Washington or Tehran is willing to step back. There is indeed any kind of condition, but what's really good, apart from that, I want to add this, that neither side is willing to continue the war. So neither side wants to continue the war, and neither side wish to step back in the negotiation talks. So we are in a situation when both sides are stuck, and they are waiting for the next step. Maybe within the next 2 weeks, they will have a chance to agree in any of conditions and come up with any solutions that will help them to at least to work on the de-escalation in the region in the upcoming days, weeks, and months.
Well, Anastasia, from one protracted and difficult conflict to another, on Sunday evening, 6:30 Central European Time, viewers will get to see your latest documentary from Somalia. Just tell us a little about that.
Well, Guy, thank you for this question. Indeed, me personally, I'm very much excited about this time. Our team, me, Bahruz Gadirov, director of this documentary, and Ilkin Mehdi, who is a cameraman, we traveled to Somalia last year. In the end of December, we received, our AnewZ frontline team received indeed a unique opportunity to visit The country in Africa, which is being considered as one of the most dangerous destinations in Africa, with a very, very interesting but sad history. We got this opportunity, we traveled there, and we indeed faced a historic moment, because first time in its history there was the elections, one vote, one person election held. Imagine, the country received its independence from its colonial past in 1960. The state government collapsed in 1991. And now we see that there are still some parts in the country which is being controlled by rebels, by the Al-Shabaab, which is one of the most dangerous terrorist organizations in the world, which worked closely with Al-Qaeda even before. Then there is a self-declared government in Somaliland, and in this fractured government structure, for the first time in history, they hold one vote, one person, one vote elections. It was indeed very good accepted by the global authorities, by European Union, by United Nations, which can see the progress from the perspective of democracy and human rights protection. But what we also witnessed there, I would say, the next day, that Israel recognized Somaliland as an independent state. Before that, even if that part of Somalia, which is being considered from the international perspective as an official part of Somalia, it was self-governed, but Israel became the first country in the world which recognized Somaliland as an independent state, talking about the right of self-determination. And being there, we felt how dissatisfied was the government in Somalia, as they could see the negative consequences for the fragile political system and the security within the country. Imagine, Guy, there is 3.4 million people internally displaced, almost 6 million people who require immediate humanitarian assistance, and most of the population are suffering because of drought. And it's indeed very difficult situation. And when there is the country who is recognizing one of the part as an independent, it also affects on the level of communication between the population and the strong stance of this country within the region. So we followed all of these events being there. We try to understand how the security changed there. I guess all of our viewers and you personally watched the film, which was so popular in 1990, since the events in 1993, Black Hawk Down. The Hollywood presented this, and it showed how the situation developed there in 1993, how the American forces decided to leave the country. And so it indeed was very interesting to see how the country changed within the last 30 years. I guess all of our viewers will have a unique chance to see what we covered there within the week while we were there, and find the answer to the main question, how Somalia changed within the last 35 years, and how the recognition of Israel by Israel, the recognition of Somaliland affects the fragile peace and security situation within the country.
Anastasia, always great to see you. Let's just have a quick look now at what viewers can expect to see on Sunday evening.
We are in Somalia, a place often used through the illusion of constant danger.
Somalia is already facing security threats from groups like Al-Shabaab.
Currently, Somalia has 3.4 million people internally displaced.
Mr. President, I want you to know that I'm signing now Israel's official recognition of Somaliland.
We are expecting all member states of the United Nations to recognize Somaliland.
We strongly rejected Prime Minister Netanyahu's illegal aggression in recognizing part of Somalia.
A conflict will last. People make so much money on it.
This country sits at the crossroads between instability and order, isolation and connection, risks and responsibility.
A senior envoy to US President Donald Trump has suggested that Italy should replace Iran at the upcoming FIFA World Cup. Well, according to the Financial Times, the proposal is part of efforts to repair ties between Trump and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. US envoy Paolo Zampoli said Italy's strong football record could justify inclusion. Italy failed to qualify after losing a playoff to Bosnia and Herzegovina in a penalty shootout, marking their third straight absence from the tournament. There's been no official response from FIFA. Iran says it is ready to compete despite earlier concerns about match locations and security issues. Well, for more on this unusual crossover between sports and politics, we're joined now by our very own Andy Mioch, who's been closely following developments. Andy, good to see you. Interesting one, this, isn't it? What exactly are we hearing then about this proposal involving Italy and the World Cup?
Well, Guy, you summed it up quite nicely, but let's take it apart bit by bit. So the Financial Times broke the story that U.S. President's special envoy for global partnership, Paolo Zampoli, pitched the idea to replace Iran with Italy at the World Cup played in U.S., Mexico, and Canada this summer. And that idea, he pitched it to Donald Trump and FIFA President Gianni Infantino. In a quote the FT got from him, he said he's an Italian native and that it will be a dream of his to see the Azzurri, the nickname for the Italian football national football team, play at a US-hosted tournament. He went on to say that with 4 World Cup titles, Italy, quote, has the pedigree to justify its inclusion. Now, the Financial Times report suggests that this idea might be part of a broader plan to mend ties between Donald Trump and Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni. Those once friendly relations strayed following President Donald Trump's attack on Pope Leo XIV, who criticized the wars raging today around the world. He called for peace, of course, regarding the Iran war. Trump then called the Pope weak, and with more than half of the Italian population being Catholic, you might imagine that did not go down well in Rome and elsewhere in Italy. Meloni said that Trump's comments were unacceptable and that it is only right for the head of the Catholic Church to call for peace and to condemn every form of war. Trump fired back. He told an Italian outlet that Meloni, who he once called one of the real leaders of the world, is now herself unacceptable and, quote, no longer the same person. Now, back to this pitch. This isn't the first time Zampoli suggested that Iran be kicked out of the World Cup with Italy replacing it. He did the same thing 4 years ago when Italy also didn't qualify. He wrote a letter then in the capacity of a UN ambassador to the FIFA president asking for the swap. That was ignored, and Iran went on to play at the World Cup in Qatar.
I mean, it's a novel idea, Andy. My guess is that, like many novel ideas, not everybody likes it. I mean, what's been the official reaction from officials, bodies, organizations around the world?
Well, I'd start with the Italians because they're here, they're called out. Their national team is here at the center of this story. Among the first reactions we heard from Italy was the one from Italy's Olympic Committee President Luciano Bonfiglio. He dismissed the idea and he said, quote, "First of all, I do not think it's possible. Second of all, I'd feel offended. In order to go to the World Cup, you have to earn it." We've also heard from Italy's sports minister, Andrea Abodi. He also dismissed the idea of an Italy-Iran swap as inappropriate, saying that you have to qualify on the pitch, while the economy Minister Giancarlo Giorgetti went even further, saying that the idea is shameful. Just for some quick context, as you mentioned, Italy lost to Bosnia and Herzegovina the qualifications playoff on March.
You hid your smile very nicely there.
Yeah, I did. I need to disclose the fact I am indeed Bosnian, and that was a very happy night for all Bosnians across the globe. This will be the third World Cup that Italy will miss in a row, and it's a big deal. It's a very cultural or football-loving nation. Now, we've also kind of heard from FIFA, not officially. They did not say anything new, but they highlighted comments made by FIFA President Infantino last week. He told CNBC Invest in America Forum that the Iranian team is coming for sure. He said, and I quote here, "Iran has to come if they are to represent their people. They really want to play, and they should play. Sport should be outside politics."
Okay, they want to play, they should play. What has been the wider reaction from Iran at these suggestions?
One of the fresh reactions that we've heard was from the Iranian embassy to Rome. They said on their social media that Zampoli's suggestion showed what they called moral bankruptcy by the United States. They said that football belongs to the people, not the politicians, adding that the U.S., quote, even fears the presence of 11 young Iranians on the pitch. A bit earlier on Wednesday, we've heard from Iranian government spokesperson Fatemeh Mohajerani, who said the men's national team is preparing for proud and successful participation in its World Cup games in the United States. The president of the Iranian Football Association, Mehdi Taj, also said he was confident Iran would take part in the World Cup despite the conflict. According to the ISNA news agency, Taj said, quote, "As things stand, we are taking part."
Andy, do you think FIFA might seriously consider this? I mean, there is precedent for unusual things happening between FIFA and the United States. We know that President Trump was relatively recently the recipient of the prestigious FIFA Award for Peace, for example. The president of FIFA and the president of the United States clearly have a close relationship. Do you think this might actually happen?
Well, we haven't heard officially from FIFA whether this is feasible. We do know that the sole winner of the FIFA Peace Prize has a close relationship with the FIFA president. He also he was there for the Board of Peace Initiative. He was there for the ceremony for signing of the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire. So there is quite a lot of cooperation going on over there. We've heard today from news reports, the BBC reported, citing sources, that FIFA has no plans to replace Iran with Italy at this summer's World Cup. Now, when we take a look back, Iran's participation in this World Cup this summer in the US, Mexico, and Canada was unclear ever since late February and the US and Israel launching strikes on Iran and everything that ensued later. On March 11th, Iran said that it would not take part in the World Cup due to safety concerns. Right after that, FIFA President Infantino said that the US president told him that Iran is welcome to the World Cup despite the war. And on March 31st, following a visit to Iran's team in Turkey, where they were playing those warm-up matches, Infantino confirmed their games would be played in the United States as scheduled. Before that, there was also some questions about where Iran would be playing their games, because they said they were negotiating with the football's governing body, FIFA, on moving their games to Mexico because of the war. As it stands right now, Iran is set to play New Zealand, Egypt, and Belgium this summer, with 2 matches being hosted in Los Angeles and the other in Seattle. And there's an interesting quirk here. If both the US and Iran finish second in their respective groups, they would then play each other in the round of 32 in Dallas on July 3rd.
Wow, now there is a match you would not want to miss. Andy, it's a strange business this, isn't it? The leader of a host country using sport to punish another country. How often has this sort of thing happened before?
Well, off the top of my head, I can think of one example. Following the wars in the former Yugoslavia, at the start of the 90s, the national football team of that Yugoslavia, which was no longer one state, was basically kicked out of the cup, and the step in Denmark, I'm gonna lie right now, I'm not really sure, but I think they came in third.
Wow, so huge consequences. Andy, thank you very much indeed for coming in. Thank you. Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at the top business news stories shaping the day with Katie Wilson. Don't go away. On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption. Welcome to AnewZ, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent.
Hello, I'm Jay. That's challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabon. One important note to fears. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the shade of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent,
Almaty, Kazakhstan,
Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, for AnewZ.
A warm welcome back to Primetime wherever you're watching. Now, Katie Wilson has joined us with the very latest business news. Katie, what have you got on your agenda tonight?
So we've got the winners and losers from the fallout of the conflict with Iran, and we'll take a closer look at the airline industry, the EV market, and an unexpected win for India. So first this evening, US markets are rallying to new heights. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ closed at record levels after President Trump extended a ceasefire with Iran, boosting investor confidence. Strong corporate earnings in tech added momentum, but not all companies shared the gains.
U.S. stocks ended higher on Wednesday, with the Dow adding about 0.7%, the S&P 500 rising 1%, and the Nasdaq climbing more than 1.6%. The gains pushed the S&P 500 and Nasdaq to record closing highs. Investor optimism was fueled by President Donald Trump's extended ceasefire with Iran, along with a round of solid corporate earnings. Shares of Tesla climbed about 4.5% in extended trading after the EV maker reported a surprise positive free cash flow in the first quarter. Tech in general had a strong session, led by gains in chip stocks such as Micron Technology, which surged 8.5% to close at a record high. That helped the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index hit an intraday record for an 11th straight session and notch its 16th straight day of gains, its longest streak ever. Mike Muscio is president of FBB Capital Partners.
Big tech earnings are going to be next week, but we're starting to see some of the things within that AI complex start to announce. All signs are pretty much, full speed ahead as far as we know in terms of the AI capital spend, and that's pulling stocks in general, but the NASDAQ, tech-heavy NASDAQ up as well. And some of these chip companies that hadn't moved much, NVIDIA being the most obvious over the course of 6 months or so from September to March, have all of a sudden started, moving in a pretty big way in the last 4 weeks.
On the downside, however, shares of ServiceNow plummeted 13% in extended trading after the software company said its first quarter subscription revenue growth was impacted by the delayed closure of several large deals due to the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. Elsewhere in the market, shares of Lululemon Athletica, down 2% at the close, tumbled another 5% in extended trading after the company picked former top Nike executive Heidi O'Neill as its next chief executive. The move comes as the retailer faces pressure from its founder and a large activist investor to revive its struggling business.
Well, let's get more on Tesla, who is ramping up spending to over $25 billion this year. The electric vehicle maker is doubling down on artificial intelligence, robotics and chips. The move underscores a major shift in strategy, but investors reacted cautiously despite strong earnings.
Tesla sharply raised its spending plan to more than $25 billion for the year as CEO Elon Musk pours money into artificial intelligence, robotics, and chips. On a post-earnings call with analysts Wednesday, the billionaire said the moves were, quote, well justified for a substantially increased future revenue stream. Shares in Tesla fell over 2% following the remarks. That reversed gains of up to 4% seen in extended trade earlier, after the company reported a positive free cash flow in the first quarter. Tesla is in the middle of one of the most expensive bets in its history. Musk has pivoted the electric vehicle maker's focus to building AI-powered self-driving cabs and humanoid robots. With a raised spending plan, the company expects cash flow to turn negative again for the rest of 2026. First quarter profit also topped Wall Street targets, in a sign that the electric vehicle maker was holding the line on costs in a difficult global environment. Tesla delivered fewer vehicles than Wall Street expected, but deliveries were still up about 6% from a year earlier. The firm's car automotive business has come under pressure as competitors introduce newer models, often at lower price points.
To the food industry now, and Nestlé has beaten first quarter sales forecasts, holding its full year outlook despite global uncertainty. Strong demand for coffee and pet food helped offset challenges in China, while the company warns rising energy and freight costs could still pose risks.
Nestlé beat first quarter sales forecasts and stuck to its annual outlook on Thursday. First quarter organic sales grew 3.5%, well ahead of analyst expectations of 2.4% as people bought more of its coffee and pet food. But the firm said organic growth took a roughly 90 basis point hit during the quarter due to a recall of infant formula products. Nestlé added product availability was now back to normal. However, China was a tough spot for the world's biggest packaged food company. Organic sales there fell just over a tenth due to a drop in volumes and flat prices. Nestlé has seen years of falling sales in the country due to factors like intense competition from local brands and lower consumer spending. It said it's overhauling its business in China to improve performance. The Swiss food giant added it had seen very little impact from the Iran war so far on its global business, although it warned about the risk of higher energy and freight cost. CEO Philip Navratil said consumer behaviour was changing due to a surge in fuel prices. He said shoppers are walking rather than driving to stores and eating at home rather than in restaurants. Navratil argued Nestlé's portfolio is well set up for people being more at home, especially in emerging markets in Asia. Investors like what they heard and shares jumped over 6% in early trade.
Over to aviation now, and United Airlines is warning profits could miss expectations this year as rising jet fuel costs squeeze margins. While demand for premium travel remains strong, the carrier says its outlook hinges on energy prices, even as easing geopolitical tensions offer some hope.
United Airlines is warning of a tougher stretch ahead. The carrier on Tuesday forecast second quarter and full-year profits below Wall Street estimates. Higher jet fuel prices are squeezing margins and clouding its near-term outlook, though demand for premium travel remains strong. The airline's shares bounced back in after-hours trading, reversing earlier losses. That was as geopolitical tensions eased after U.S. President Donald Trump's extension of the Iran ceasefire, raising the prospect of lower energy prices. United said its outlook is based on jet fuel prices as of mid-April. Results could land at the high end of the guidance if fuel costs fall, or at the low end if prices climb further. The company pegged fuel costs at about $4.30 per gallon this quarter, highlighting the strain from elevated prices. The airline sees itself recovering at best 50% of the fuel price hikes through fares and other revenue measures in the second quarter. That recovery rate is presumed to improve later this year, rising in the third quarter and potentially reaching near full recovery by the fourth.
Staying with the airline industry, and the Trump administration is reportedly close to a deal to rescue Spirit Airlines, as soaring fuel costs pile pressure on the budget carrier. The move could see Washington take a stake, marking another major intervention in corporate America.
The Trump administration is nearing a deal to rescue embattled low-cost carrier Spirit Airlines. That's according to a report in the Wall Street Journal on Wednesday, which said the U.S. government will lend Spirit as much as $500 million in exchange for warrants to take a potential stake in the carrier. Spirit in August filed for its second Chapter 11 bankruptcy in less than a year. President Donald Trump told CNBC this week that he would like someone to acquire the airline and said it was possible the federal government could get involved. Global carriers are contending with surging jet fuel prices after U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran disrupted traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. Spirit built its turnaround plan based on fuel costs averaging about $2.24 per gallon in 2026 and $2.14 in 2027, according to its March disclosures. But by mid-April, jet fuel prices were around $4.24 a gallon, $2 more than the carrier's projections. The pending government deal would mark the latest example of the Trump administration's intervention in public companies, following stakes in Intel, MP Materials, and other firms. Spirit declined to comment on the matter, but said it was operating normally.
That's your business news for today. Back to you, Guy.
Katie, thank you very much. And now some breaking news. AnewZ has obtained exclusive information that the European Union has adopted its 20th sanction package, lifting previous imposed restrictions on several Azerbaijani oil tankers. While sanctions introduced under the 17th, 18th and 19th packages on vessels named Karabakh, Hankandi, Shusha, Zagatala and Zangezur have been removed. The latest sanction package does not include Sokaz Kolevi oil terminal in Georgia. Okay, after the break, the European Union approves a major financial package for Ukraine as leaders meet to discuss security and sanctions. Don't go away. A warm welcome back wherever you're watching Primetime. The European Union has formally approved a €90 billion loan for Ukraine. Well, the announcement comes as EU leaders gather in Cyprus for a 2-day meeting where Ukraine is expected to be high on the agenda. The massive loan was cleared after Hungary lifted its veto against it. It coincides with new EU sanctions against Russia. President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to join discussions in Cyprus, where leaders will also tackle broader issues, including energy security and regional tensions. Well, to break this down, we're joined by political analyst Enrico Cosero, joining us from Madrid in Spain. Enrico, great to have you on the show again. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. How significant is this,
Thank you for having me.
this €90 billion euro loan then at this stage of the war? I mean, it's a huge amount of money, isn't it?
It's a huge amount of money. It was, but probably for you, it's a huge amount of money. But I don't think it is as much as for Ukraine. The main thing here that I can consider is that first. It's the first time that Hungary and Slovakia they both unlock any sort of veto to Ukraine aid, which is quite important. This means two different loans of two different aids to Ukraine of 45 billion euros each. That has to be spent in. They have to be spent in 28 billion for military aid and for military expense, and 17 million for budgetary reasons. So it's a huge amount of money delivered by the European Union. It's a huge amount of money coming from a blocking situation provoked by Hungary and Slovakia, and Ukraine, of course, has to repair it and show that they repaired the pipeline, which has been for a long time a great point of discordance with these two countries, with Hungary and Slovakia, the Druzhba pipeline, and that is going to feed with Russian oil to these two countries. So I think right now is a win-win that we have to see which is the profit that Russia takes with all this agreement, because as soon as Russia is going to pump oil into Hungary and Slovakia, that means money again for Russia. So let's see what this is leading to.
Yeah, you mentioned Hungary there. I mean, what do you make of Hungary lifting this veto? Does it tell us something, you think, about the state of EU unity right now, or where it might be going in the future?
I think here, as much as Slovakia and Hungary, and especially Hungary, they're playing the EU card on this time. They weren't playing this card, or they were playing in this with this factor previously, because they're friendly ties with Russia, but right now they're playing the EU card. I think that as much as I know about the deal, is the first step was taken by Slovakia, probably with a lack of oil, suffering in their territory, suffering in its country, and Hungary was just very prone to accept the deal and to accept the unlocking of the deal, because Orban is going to be out in weeks, and Peter Magyar is going to be in the government. Is going to be the president of Hungary soon. So I think everything has come. I don't know. Everything has come is coming along for this deal. Ukraine needs the money, and we have to consider that one of the main of the main concerns here is that being United States in the middle of conflict with Iran, the supplies of weaponry and the supply of arms to Ukraine were being delayed and or not being delivered at all. So I think this is more than an oxygen balloon for Ukraine. So as I said, everything was coming along to this deal. Everything is sort of the perfect scenario for this deal. But I have to insist, let's see how Russia takes profit from it.
Yeah, let's see indeed. Enrique, how does this package fit into the EU's broader strategy towards Russia? And as this is already the 20th package of sanctions, how effective is this strategy in reality?
We really don't know, right? I mean, this war is coming into its fifth year, and there is no sign of being finished soon. No matter the talks, no matter the conversations, no matter who is if Turkey is trying to deal with both countries, and no matter who's intermediating with Russia and Ukraine in order to reach a peace agreement or ceasefire or a truce or whatever. But we know for sure that Poland or Germany or probably Finland, Sweden, they are threatened right now by Russia. So as much as these countries want to do whatever they have to do or whatever they're up to do in order to contain Russia, they're gonna do it. So for one matter, from one side, Ukraine is getting the money. Ukraine is gonna get the help and the resources to recover armamentically in this situation. But Russia is gonna get profit by the oil that it's gonna pump to Hungary and to Slovakia. So as I said before, probably this is gonna be indeed an immediate help for Ukraine. But it's also fresh air, and it's also money for Russia. So let's see what Germany, Finland, Sweden, especially Poland, they have to say in the next months when this situation is stabilized.
And what role do you think President Zelensky's participation in the Cyprus meeting will play, Enrique?
It's a point of pressure to Russia. It's a great photo op for saying Europe is with no matter what it is with Ukraine, especially with this agreement. But as everybody knows, this sort of agreements are taken unanimously by all the countries on the European Union. If only one country veto it, there is no agreement at all. So right now, with all the European Union watching to or just leading their eyes to Ukraine in order to help the country, is a very, very significant picture. This is a very significant photo that we're gonna get in the next days to say to Russia and probably to China, okay, this is our ally. No matter if Ukraine is on the NATO, no matter if Ukraine is on the EU, we're gonna defend this guy.
And finally, Enrique, what should we be watching out for in the coming days, particularly from other EU leaders?
What we have to check first and foremost is what I consider the most amazing adaptation to a field of battle that we've seen in the last 50 years, which is Ukraine developing drone technology and owning their owning innovation in order to repel and to attack Russia. And this, I think, that what's going to happen with that money, what Ukraine is going to develop with that money, what how Ukraine is going to innovate with that money. That, as I said, 28 millions for 2026 and 28 millions for 2027 are going to be spent just in military items and military issues. That's for me a very important question. This is a very important matter to watch. And for the rest of European leaders, the first thing we have to see is, of course, what is going to be Peter Magyar's position in the next decisions that the European Union is gonna take, or the next I don't know, help, aid, loans, whatever the help is gonna be to Ukraine. I mean, this Peter Magyar winning the elections in Hungary is a game changer. And let's gonna see if it's so changing that we're expecting.
Enrique, always great to have you and your analysis. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, after the break, Russia and North Korea relations in the spotlight. Stay with us. On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
We are in Somalia, a place often used through the illusion of constant danger.
Somalia is already facing security threats from groups like Al-Shabaab.
Currently, Somalia has 3.4 million people internally displaced.
Mr. President, I want you to know that I'm signing now Israel's official recognition of Somaliland.
We are expecting all member states of the United Nations to recognize Somaliland.
We strongly rejected Prime Minister Netanyahu's illegal aggression in recognizing part of Somalia.
A conflict will last. People make so much money on it.
This country sits at the crossroads between instability and order, isolation and connection, risks and responsibility. Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent.
Hello, I'm Jay. That's challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. One important note to fears. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the shade of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent,
Almaty, Kazakhstan,
Port Sudan,
Tehran,
Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul for AnewZ.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. North Korea and Russia have been showcasing closer cooperation this week with new progress on a cross-border bridge and a ceremony in Wonsan for a hospital project. While the Russian health minister attended the ceremony in Wonsan linked to the construction of a hospital, North Korean state media described it as symbolizing the friendship between the two countries. Well, Pyongyang also said work is moving ahead on a new road bridge across the Tumen River. It said the crossing is intended to boost trade, tourism, and the movement of people. The bridge project was agreed during President Vladimir Putin's visit last year. The two countries have expanded contacts since signing a strategic partnership in 2024. Okay, let's take a closer look at what's driving this growing partnership between North Korea and Russia and what it signals beyond the symbolism. We're joined now by Andrei Korobkov, Professor of Political Science and International Relations at Middle Tennessee State University and President at Russian, Eurasian and East European Studies section of the International Studies Association. Professor, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the show tonight.
Thank you.
What stands out for you in these latest developments between North Korea and Russia?
Well, these recent years have been really triumphant for Korean leader because he has proven his usefulness. He supplied Russia with about 10,000 or more troops that participated in the war, and while it was in the Russian territory, they have proven their effectiveness. He supplies Russia with significant numbers of artillery shells, according to some estimates, about 10,000 are used daily. And as a result, first of all, he was recognized as equal a number of times, while Putin's visit, Lukashenko's visit, at an absolutely triumphant meeting in China when he was singled out and was treated as equal to Xi and Putin. And respectively, well, after proving his both effectiveness and ability and willingness to cooperate, including cooperation on military matters, of course, he is getting some perks. So these are relatively symbolic steps, building and opening up of a road, agreements on the expansion of tourism, construction of a hospital, and so on. But at the same time, there are real, moves like additional agreements on the use of North Korean labor in Russia, clear signs that there would be technological transfers, including those in the high-tech military sphere, to North Korea. and a number of steps that were taken by Russia and China, that prevented the introduction of additional sanctions against North Korea. And of course, it allows Kim not only to raise his general standing, but also to balance, and it's kind of ironic, more between China and Russia. For many years, essentially the whole period after the end of the Cold War, North Korea was heavily dependent on China and had to a very large extent do what the Chinese were telling it to do. Now, the time returns that was typical for the Cold War period when North Korea was and can start doing now again, balancing between Russia and China, and at the same time it gets some protections against pressure coming from the US and other countries, because there is at least hope that both Russia and China would either moderate or simply prevent the introduction of additional measures against North Korea.
It sounds like there's quite a bit of building going on, or at least planned. How significant is this new infrastructure cooperation? For example, the bridge project?
Any cooperation is important for North Korea because it's under such a heavy pressure and doesn't have either money or industrial capacity to develop it on its own. Of course, there are very serious limits, first of all, because of the level of control over North Korean population by the regime. Second, the lack of financial ability on the part of the absolute majority of North Koreans to capitalize on any joint projects. But symbolically, it's important, and it opens up additional avenues. First, to use North Korean labor abroad, and second, at the same time, to invest in those areas of North Korean economy that could be of interest to Russian and potentially other businesses. But limitations continue both due to the politics of the regime and the essence of the economic system. Previous attempts, say, by China to invest into North Korean economy to a large extent have failed. But situation is changing. The regime, while not changing its political essence and severity of its control, is allowing the, kind of indiscreet privatization, is allowing the expansion of the private sector, and probably it opens at least some avenues for further economic cooperation as well.
Now, Professor, of course, Russia is a hugely powerful country. It's at liberty to decide who it partners with, many hundreds of countries around the world that it could choose. When it looks around for potential partners and it sees North Korea's approach to trade, to human rights, to many other issues, what is it that you think President Putin admires so much about North Korea?
Well, the level of control, it's clear, but here it's much more pragmatic. North Korea, I will repeat it, has proven that it can be useful as a supplier of military force, as a supplier of simple but very useful, needed armaments. First of all, artillery shells, 155 millimeter artillery shells. And it is clear that cooperation in this sphere would expand, and it's quite possible that Russia would stimulate the development of particular areas, not only North Korean economy in general, but specifically its armaments industry.
And how do you think other countries are likely to view this growing partnership?
Well, clearly they would not be happy, but on the one hand, they don't have any ability to act in this regard, because any multilateral actions would require an agreement on the part of Russia and China. And on the other hand, their ability to introduce secondary sanctions, this time against Russia and China, is also very limited because Russia is under such a number of sanctions, overall more than 20,000, that it's very hard to imagine that any additional sanctions would make any kind of significant change in this regard.
And finally, Professor, as this develops, what should we be looking out for? Key indicators both from Pyongyang and Moscow and also from other countries around the world.
Well, we should be looking, first of all, at any kind of legal developments, whether there would be additional agreements. You have mentioned the strategic partnership agreement that was signed last year, and it, among other things, includes a clause on the possibility of mutual military support. So North Korea relied on this agreement to conduct its actions, military activity in regard to Russia-Ukraine war. Of course, it sends a signal that it can be the other way around as well. Russia getting involved if North Korea gets into some military clash with the others. And of course, we should be looking at specific economic projects that are to be started. We talked about the hospital, we talked about the recent road opening. Again, it's more symbolic than practical because, well, hard to expect North Koreans, say, driving to Russia in large numbers. Russian tourism does take place now in North Korea, but it proceeds under the previous conditions when no contacts essentially are allowed between tourists who are put in isolated facilities and the local population. Still, such moves, and especially, say, economic projects that potentially can be started, will be indicative of where this cooperation goes in the future.
Professor, we appreciate your incisive analysis very much indeed. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at the remaining stories and check in with our correspondents around the world for the very latest developments in their regions. Don't go away.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. AnewZ is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on AnewZ.
We are in Somalia, a place often used through the illusion of constant danger.
Somalia is already facing security threats from groups like Al-Shabaab.
Currently, Somalia has 3.4 million people internally displaced.
Mr. President, I want you to know that I'm signing now Israel's official recognition of Somaliland.
We are expecting all member states of the United Nations to recognize Somaliland.
We strongly rejected Prime Minister Netanyahu's illegal aggression in recognizing part of Somalia.
A conflict will last. People make so much money on it.
This country sits at the crossroads between instability and order, isolation and connection, risks and responsibility.
Welcome to AnewZ, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent.
Hello, I'm Jay. That's challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. One important note. To this. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the shade of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro,
Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent,
Almaty, Kazakhstan,
Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad,
Istanbul,
Kabul, for AnewZ.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. A Russian airstrike has hit the southeastern Ukrainian city of Dnipro, killing 3 people and injuring 10 others. Well, officials say 5 of the injured remain in hospital as emergency crews continue rescue efforts. Meanwhile, Russia's Samara region also reported casualties from a drone attack. The governor stated 1 person was killed and several injured after drones struck industrial sites and a residential building. Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico has welcomed the reopening of the Druzhba pipeline. Oil flow has resumed after months of disruption. Well, crude deliveries to Slovakia restarted on Thursday. It marked the end of an outage that Ukraine said was the result of a Russian strike on the pipeline. Hungary and Slovakia rely heavily on Russian energy and have sought to maintain supplies despite EU efforts to phase out imports following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Well, Fico said the resumption of the pipeline shows the issue was a political one. There's been no immediate response from Ukraine.
If you ask me whether I believe the Druzhba pipeline will continue to transport Russian oil on and on and on, I cannot answer that, and I am not going to make any predictions here now. I believe that a serious relationship between Ukraine and the European Union was established yesterday and today through the agreements reached regarding the loan and the opening of the Druzhba pipeline. I could say a lot of things right now, but I'll say just one thing. I think that the opening of the Druzhba pipeline at 2 a.m. this morning confirms that the Druzhba pipeline was not damaged. Do you know what I'm talking about? It wasn't damaged, and the Druzhba pipeline and oil were used as tools in a geopolitical struggle. We must also take into account such a scenario because there is a war, and during a war all sorts of things happen.
Lebanon's fragile ceasefire with Israel is under growing strain, with new deaths reported and political tensions over talks. At the same time, France has been mourning a soldier who was killed over the weekend in Lebanon.
The latest violence in southern Lebanon has raised new doubts over whether the US-mediated ceasefire can hold beyond its scheduled expiry on Sunday. Wednesday became the deadliest day since the truce took effect on April 16th, with at least 5 people killed, including journalist Amal Khalil, whose body was returned to her hometown overnight. Meanwhile, France held a tribute ceremony on Thursday for Sergeant Major Florian Montorio. He was a UN peacekeeper killed in an attack in the south last week that French officials say was likely carried out by Hezbollah. With growing pressure, Hezbollah lawmaker Hassan Fadlallah said the group supports continuing the ceasefire, but only if Israel fully halts military actions.
We want to continue with the truce, but on the basis of full compliance by the Israeli enemy. Full compliance means a halt to assassinations, a complete ceasefire, a cessation of aggression, a halt to the bulldozing of villages, a halt to the destruction of villages, and then paving the way for the enemy's withdrawal through procedures undertaken by the Lebanese state, but not via direct negotiations.
Fadlallah also repeated Hezbollah's rejection of direct talks with Israel, even as Lebanese and Israeli envoys were due to meet again under US auspices. Lebanon is seeking an extension of the ceasefire, but continued strikes and mounting casualties are making that increasingly difficult.
South Korea's special envoy today met Iran's foreign minister for high-level talks. Well, the meeting addressed Seoul's concerns for its citizens and shipping in the region. Minister Araghchi also used the occasion to state that aggressors, meaning the US and Israel, bore responsibility for the war's consequences. Seoul's foreign ministry spokesperson provided the details on the diplomatic exchange.
In meeting with Foreign Minister Araghchi, Special Envoy Chung asked for Iran's continued attention to the safety of about 40 South Korean nationals currently in Iran, as well as to the safety of our 26 vessels and their crews. In response, Minister Araghchi said he would keep in mind our requests regarding the vessels, would continue to take good care of the safety of our nationals, and positively assessed the uninterrupted role played by our embassy. The Iranian side also explained, however, that issues concerning the strait are matters related to the United States.
Thousands of Samsung workers gathered outside one of the company's chip sites in South Korea as pressure builds over pay and conditions. Well, the dispute is threatening to disrupt AI chip production at a critical moment for the global semiconductor industry.
At this sprawling chip complex south of Seoul, workers from Samsung Electronics staged one of the company's largest ever rallies. Union organisers and police said around 40,000 people joined Thursday's demonstration. It comes ahead of a planned 18-day strike next month, which could disrupt production of advanced AI chips. At issue is a growing dispute over pay and work conditions. Workers say there is a widening gap in bonus pay compared with Samsung rival SK Hynix, which recently surged ahead in supplying high-bandwidth memory used in AI systems. One union leader said the dispute goes far beyond wages.
Semiconductors are the most important industry that will determine the future of the Republic of Korea, covering AI, electronics, automobiles, and more. If the people working in the most important industry are not fairly compensated, who will take responsibility for the future?
Some say the pay gap within Samsung is already driving employees to work for competitors instead.
Many employees are leaving for SK Hynix. These days, there's even talk that the people who want to go to Hynix but can't are the ones coming to Samsung, and many also say that people are leaving for Hynix because of their abilities. It can't be helped. At the end of the day, more than 90% of employees work for pay, and the compensation gap has become so wide that it's driving these moves.
Despite the worker action, investor sentiment appeared largely unaffected, with Samsung shares closing at a record high, buoyed by strong earnings from SK Hynix. A small group of shareholders joined the workers on Thursday. They voiced concern that a prolonged strike could disrupt production and impact factory operations.
French President Emmanuel Macron is set to visit Armenia in early May for a high-profile visit. Well, he's expected to sign a strategic partnership agreement and deepen cooperation, underscoring Yerevan's growing ties with the West.
French President Emmanuel Macron is scheduled to arrive in Yerevan on May 4th for a two-day official visit. According to Armenian Deputy Foreign Minister Vahan Kostanyan, a comprehensive strategic partnership agreement will be signed during the trip. Kostanyan noted this long-discussed document aims to broaden Armenia-France relations with an extensive agenda covering various fields. The planned cooperation areas include education, military technical collaboration, and artificial intelligence, reflecting a wider move towards technological and defence alignment. Macron's itinerary features high-level meetings, notably with Prime Minister Nicole Pashinyan, where regional security and bilateral projects are expected to be key topics. On May 4th, the French leader will also participate in the European Political Community Summit in Yerevan, ahead of his state visit beginning the following day. Yerevan has invited EU leaders and heads of various international organisations to the summit, including NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte.
Military exercises were held in the Kars province of Turkey, with the participation of the Turkish and Azerbaijani armed forces on Wednesday. Well, the Haydar Aliyev 2026 Joint Battalion Task Group drills were accompanied by live fire exercises. Participants were first briefed on modern weapons and combat equipment, as well as unit deployment and the planned stages of the exercise. Well, Turkey has joined a growing number of European countries curbing its use of digital tech for young users after passing a new law prohibiting social media for children under 15. The ban also includes stricter controls on online gaming, including age ratings and limits on access to unrated titles.
A bill banning social media for those under the age of 15 has been passed by the Turkish Grand National Assembly. The draft law on amendments to the law on social services and other laws covering provisions related to the use of social networks entered into force. The article "Deletion of content and blocking of access to posts" that was annulled by the Constitutional Court has been amended. Under the new rules, social media service providers will not be able to provide services to children under 15 years of age and will have to take necessary measures, including age verification, to prevent the provision of such services. Social media service providers will take the necessary measures to provide personalised services specifically for those over the age of 15. These measures will be published on the social media service provider's website. The regulations extend beyond social media to online gaming. Platforms will be prohibited from offering games without proper age ratings, and unrated titles may only be made available to adults under the highest age classification. The law will enter into force 6 months after being published in the official Gazette. Turkey joins Australia, France, Greece and Portugal in adopting similar child protection frameworks for the digital space. Turkey's new decision on social media follows a deadly school attacks in Kahramanmaraş and Şanlıurfa provinces.
US Navy Secretary John Phelan has been dismissed from his post with immediate effect, according to Pentagon officials. Well, the brief announcement gave no formal reason, but sources cite disagreements over naval reforms and strained ties with senior defense leadership. The move comes amid wider Pentagon changes under Pete Hegseth and marks the first removal of a service secretary in Donald Trump's current administration. Navy Undersecretary Hung Cao is expected to step in as acting secretary while officials continue to review the situation. Mexico has reopened one of its most iconic heritage sites after a rare act of violence shocked visitors earlier this week. Authorities moved quickly to strengthen security and restore confidence so that tourists can continue their visits safely.
Security has been tightened at Teotihuacan as the famous archaeological complex reopened to visitors on Wednesday. The site had closed temporarily after a gunman shot and killed a Canadian woman on Monday. 13 others were injured before the attacker took his own life. Officials described the incident as rare for a major tourist destination. On reopening day, members of Mexico's National Guard joined state and local police across the area. According to Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, around 40 National Guard troops have been added to patrols.
Como
As instructed by the President, we will also have security arches, which will of course give us an additional layer of security. For now, today, police presence has been increased at each of the 5 entrances to the archaeological site.
For now, visitors face basic bag checks while authorities work to install metal detectors. Hundreds of tourists returned on Wednesday, many receiving free entry after the closure. Some said the stronger security presence made them feel safer, though concerns remain.
The incident has already happened, and we feel there'll be enough security here. I do feel that in Mexico, they should have done bag checks.
I didn't know if the site would be open due to what happened, but I was pretty sure it would be. I'm not feeling insecure because I was pretty sure there would be a lot of policemen and police around. But I think it's really terrible what happened because it's such a popular site in Mexico. And
Local vendors are urging tourists to keep visiting. They say the community depends heavily on tourism and hope confidence will return quickly.
Wildfires are once again testing emergency response systems in northern Japan, with thousands forced to leave their homes. Officials warn the situation remains unpredictable as crews race to contain the flames.
More than 1,800 people in northern Japan have been ordered to evacuate as wildfires continue to spread across Iwate Prefecture. Authorities say the fires began on Wednesday in a rural coastal area where more than 150 hectares of forest have already burned. One blaze started with several buildings already on fire, while another broke out hours later nearby, spreading close to homes. Evacuation orders now affect around 700 households as firefighters work to contain the fast-moving flames. Despite the scale of the fires, no casualties have been reported so far.
Regarding the forest fires in Otsuki Iwate Prefecture, we are aware of roughly 15 hectares of damage to forest in the Kozuchi district and roughly 140 hectares in the Kirikiri district as of 3 a.m. today. 7 buildings, including 1 residence, have been damaged in the Kirikiri district. There are no casualties.
The government has activated its crisis response systems, establishing an information office at the Prime Minister's headquarters to assess damage and coordinate efforts. Iwate Prefecture is no stranger to such disasters. Last year, the region experienced its worst wildfires in decades, which burned nearly 3,000 hectares and forced thousands from their homes.
Global food systems are coming under growing pressure as extreme heat reshapes how and where food is produced. A new UN report warns the impacts are already being felt across agriculture, fisheries and livestock.
Extreme heat is increasingly threatening global food systems, putting the livelihoods and health of more than 1 billion people at risk, according to a new report by the Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Meteorological Organization. The report finds that heat waves are becoming more frequent, intense and prolonged, damaging crops, livestock, fisheries and forests. Experts warn that rising temperatures are already reducing yields, increasing pests and disease, and limiting when farmers can safely work.
Obviously, extreme heat is going to make it much harder in terms of the productivity of livestock, in terms of the dairy industry, in terms of actually, in some cases, increasing the deaths of livestock because of the sharp impact.
For many major crops, production begins to decline once temperatures exceed 30 degrees Celsius, while livestock face stress at even lower levels, leading to lower productivity and, in some cases, higher death rates. Fisheries are also affected, with marine heat waves reducing oxygen levels in water and harming fish stocks. Researchers say extreme heat acts as a risk multiplier, worsening droughts, wildfires and water shortages, and amplifying damage across food systems. In 2024, more than 90% of the world's oceans experienced at least one marine heat wave. The report also highlights growing risks for agricultural workers, with extreme temperatures reducing productivity and posing serious health threats. In some regions, outdoor work could become unsafe for much of the year. While adaptation measures such as better forecasting, early warning systems and changes in farming practices can help, the agencies warn that long-term solutions will require coordinated global action to address climate change.
Industry figures and energy professionals have come together in Baku for a forum focused on oil trading and logistics across the Caspian and Central Asia, discussing the future of regional trade and transport routes. AnewZ's correspondent Rakaya Bashamak reports now from the event.
Hello from Baku, Azerbaijan, where the second annual Caspian and Central Asia Oil Trading and Logistics Forum is bringing together 150 senior energy leaders from across Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Central Asia, the Middle East, and more. More than 20 expert speakers are also taking the stage across the sessions, shaping discussions on the future of regional energy trade. Major oil companies like Sokar, Shell, and Petronas are among those taking part, alongside traders, transport operators, and financial institutions. So the focus here is on practicality, especially given the latest developments and existing tensions in the Middle East. Discussions are looking at oil reserves across the region, the impact of geopolitics and supplies, and how disruptions from the Middle East to the Red Sea are reshaping global energy.
The forum began with a showcase of traditional Azerbaijani cultural dance, offering delegates a warm local welcome before discussions got underway. Day one features 3 key sessions, starting with oil reserves, geopolitics and supply disruptions, and how countries like Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan and Turkmenistan are positioning themselves amid shifting global demand.
It wasn't just a panel talking, and what the panel put forward was all very relevant to the conversation of different oil supplies from different parts of the world, with the current problem that we have with the Strait of Hormuz, and the effect of it at the end, 1,200% rise in the price of liquid natural gas.
I have quite a background in this region in terms of transportation and trading of oil, and I think it's very relevant here to be discussing how to improve and how to optimize the flow in this very important region.
The second session focuses on trading, blending and refining, looking at how companies are managing volatile prices, competition from Asia's refining hubs, and the need for stronger risk management.
And as we are here on the ground, we have been speaking to key representatives and hearing their views firsthand on the future of energy moving forward.
So today, the Kazakh delegation is taking part in an important event. This event is dedicated to the oil and gas logistics, and definitely since Kazakhstan is a neighbor to Azerbaijan, and taking into account that geopolitical situation is shifting. We see that different wars, conflicts are affecting on a landlocked country as Kazakhstan. That's why boosting cooperation in the oil and gas sector with Azerbaijan is a primary goal.
We hope to build relationships and start proper trading. We are a trading house. We can say we're a small company trading in the East African, Red Sea and Indian subcontinent region, and we want to expand our trading activities and even our investment portfolio. And the region here is very promising with opportunities.
Well, I think it's really important because coming from Pakistan,
We have a lot of very close ties with the countries that are represented here, particularly Azerbaijan. We have very long and close ties, as well as with some of the other countries as well. And I think that there is a huge opportunity for all of these countries to look at Pakistan as a destination market as well as a transit market for their oil and gas.
The final session examines alternative supply routes, including new pipeline proposals and infrastructure challenges in the Caspian Sea, as the region seeks more stable export routes. The forum will continue into day 2, with further discussions expected on the future of energy trade.
In my view,
Afghanistan and Iran are highlighting closer ties following a call between their foreign ministers. Kabul also signalled support for ongoing Iran-US diplomacy, calling dialogue the way forward.
The Afghan Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi spoke by phone with his Iranian counterpart Sayyid Abbas Araghchi to discuss the regional situation and the latest developments in relations between the two neighbouring countries. The Afghan side says Muttaqi described bilateral cooperation as positive and progressing. He welcomed the rising level of trade between Afghanistan and Iran and also pointed to broader cooperation in other sectors. However, the most notable part of the conversation was his comments on diplomacy between Iran and the United States. Muttaqi called that diplomatic approach a constructive step and stressed that outstanding issues should be resolved through dialogue and negotiations. For his part, Iranian Foreign Minister Sayyid Abbas Araghchi reportedly praised the growing cooperation between the two countries and the progress made so far in bilateral relations. He also shared Iran's views on how those ties can be developed further going forward. The Afghan Foreign Ministry says Araghchi also briefed Muttaqi on the latest developments in talks between Iran and the United States. So overall, this was not just a routine diplomatic contact. It was also a signal from Kabul in support of engagement, negotiation and continued regional diplomacy, while at the same time highlighting deeper political and economic cooperation with Tehran. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, AnewZ.
Amid rising regional tensions, Mark Rutte held talks with Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Ankara on Wednesday, focusing on strengthening NATO's collective defence and enhancing cooperation ahead of a key July summit in Turkey. Our correspondent Adam Morrow reports from Turkey.
NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte met President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Wednesday to discuss regional developments and preparations for an upcoming NATO summit, which will be hosted by Turkey in July. The closed-door meeting in Ankara was also attended by senior Turkish officials, including Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan and Defense Minister Yaşar Güler. At the meeting, Erdogan stressed the importance of stronger inter-alliance cooperation and called on European NATO members to assume greater responsibility for collective defense. He also highlighted Turkey's growing defense capabilities, especially in the field of air defense systems. A core NATO member since 1952, Turkey has the alliance's second largest military and plays a critical role in safeguarding its southeastern region. In recent years, Ankara has also become one of the world's leading defense manufacturers, supplying drones, naval systems, and electronic warfare technologies to allied and partnered countries. Shortly before his meeting with Erdogan, Rutte visited the Ankara headquarters of Aselsan, a leading Turkish defense technology firm. Speaking to reporters, Rutte praised Turkey's achievements in the defense technology field, noting that stepped-up defense industrial production remains a top NATO priority. Rutte said the issue will be at the top of the agenda at the upcoming NATO summit in Ankara. He also said NATO had to do more in terms of defense industrial production, adding that the alliance could, quote, learn a lot from Turkey. Rutte also reaffirmed NATO's commitment to collective defense, noting that in recent weeks, NATO air defense systems had intercepted 4 missiles fired toward Turkey from Iran. This is Adam Morrow for AnewZ in Istanbul, Turkey.
A new round of talks between Georgia and Kazakhstan highlights growing interest in the Middle Corridor. However, infrastructure gaps continue to slow progress. Nini Nikolashvili has more.
The meeting between Georgian President Mikhail Kavalashvili and Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev comes at a time when the Middle Corridor is shifting from political narrative to practical implementation. For both countries, this route is not just a diplomatic talking point. Kazakhstan is actively seeking to diversify its export routes westward, reducing reliance on traditional northern corridors that pass through Russia. Georgia, positioned on the Black Sea, sees itself as a transit hub connecting Central Asia to European markets. Their interests clearly intersect, but not equally. Kazakhstan is already deeply embedded in multiple large-scale projects, working closely with the European Union, China, and regional partners to expand transport and energy links. Its role is defined by resources, skill, and geography. Georgia's role, while strategically important, depends heavily on its ability to offer efficient transit infrastructure and stable logistics. The European Union has now moved beyond general support and is investing in concrete connectivity projects across the wider middle corridor. At a recent meeting of foreign ministers in Luxembourg, Enlargement Commissioner Marta Kos made clear that the middle corridor is no longer just a concept, but a developing network backed by infrastructure projects and investment. Engagement is accelerating, particularly with Azerbaijan, Turkey, and increasingly Armenia, where rail, energy, and transit systems are being actively developed. This creates a competitive environment where participation is determined less by political alignment and more by delivery capacity. Georgia remains part of the route geographically, especially through its Black Sea ports, but is not at the forefront of the EU's current project pipeline. This is where the Georgia-Kazakhstan meeting needs a reality check. While both leaders emphasize strategic partnership and corridor expansion, major bottlenecks remain, including limited port capacity, underdeveloped rail links, and coordination challenges across the route. In practical terms, this meeting reinforces political alignment rather than delivering immediate change. The future of the Middle Corridor will depend on which countries can translate strategy into infrastructure and secure the investment needed to make the route faster, cheaper, and reliable. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, AnewZ.
Kazakhstan and Turkey have agreed to allow military transit through their airspaces, a move set to boost mobility for both nations. Fariza Kalamazina has more.
Kazakhstan's Senate has ratified an agreement with Turkey allowing military personnel and equipment to transit through the airspace of both countries. The deal creates a clear framework for using each other's air corridors, including for deployments linked to UN peacekeeping missions. For Kazakhstan, this means more direct and practical routes, especially through Turkey, which connects Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. The process will be strictly regulated. Each flight will require prior approval from the relevant authorities, requested in advance through diplomatic channels. Annual permits will apply only to military transport aircraft. A single diplomatic clearance number can also be used for other purposes, including humanitarian aid, official delegations, and training activities. Both countries keep the right to refuse or cancel any request if the rules are not followed. This is important for Kazakhstan, where national law generally does not allow the transit of foreign military forces and equipment unless it's covered by international agreements. As regional dynamics continue to shift, the agreement is expected to make coordination easier and improve mobility, particularly during joint exercises and peacekeeping operations. However, officials have not said what specific operations or needs led to the signing of this agreement. Fariza Kalimurzaeva, Almaty, AnewZ.
Well, that brings us to the end of Prime Time. Andy Mioch will be back tomorrow evening with plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here at AnewZ, thanks for watching.